Hello, creative and crafty people. I hope y'all are doing well today. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these elegant Labradorite beaded copper wire earrings. Labradorite is a unique semi-precious stone that picks up the light and refracts it and creates a little flash of light or a type of iridescence. So you will notice as you see these beads in this video the gorgeous iridescence I am speaking of. Now, if you'd like to see how I make these fun earrings, stick around and let's get creating. For materials, we're going to need some 18 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at 11.5 centimeters. We are going to need some 24 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at 8 centimeters each. We're going to need some 20 gauge wire, 2 pieces cut at 4.3 centimeters each. We're going to need 2 6mm round Labradorite beads, or any beads of your choice. We're going to need some chain nose pliers, some round nose pliers, some flush cutters, a chasing hammer, a bench block, a cup burr or a file, and I forgot to add one more tool you'll need, which is some looping pliers. If you didn't catch something in the materials list, you can either go back and rewatch this part of the video, or you can check out the materials list in the description of this video. Now let's get started on this project. First, we're going to need to grab our 18 gauge wire, the 2 pieces that we cut at 11.5 centimeters. We're going to grab one of those, and with the round nose pliers, we're going to create a small loop at the end of this wire. Just like so. And we're going to make sure the end of that wire comes back around and meets back up with itself, so we have a nice closed loop. Now we're going to spiral around this loop. So I'm going to bring that wire up around this loop very tightly. Not so that the wires are touching each other, but so that there's about a space of another wire that could fit inside of this loop. So there you can see I've done that, and I'm also going to just pull this part back together with my chain nose pliers. So if you don't feel like it's together enough or tight enough, you can push it back up into itself like this. And there you can see I've got it almost to where I want it. There we go. And you want it to be pretty tight, but not too tight. So now we're going to do the same thing with this other 18 gauge wire. So grabbing my round nose pliers, I'm going to start off making my loop, bringing the tail end of that wire all the way around until it touches back with itself, like so. And now we're going to begin spiraling around that loop. We're going to pull it all the way around until the tail end of that wire meets up with the top of the opposite tail end. You'll see what I'm saying here in just a moment. So there, that's where I'm going to end that. And now both of these should be pretty identical. They're not going to be exactly exact, but you can get them pretty close. Like so. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and just grab at the end of that wire and just curve it out just a little bit more. Round that up And now I'm going to create a bend back toward the opposite direction of this spiral. Like so. And you can have a little creative freedom with this. You can make it a little shorter, a little longer of a curve, whatever you'd like to do. Now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and grab at the point of this wire where it comes over the top of the right side of the spirals we made. And then we're going to grab the tail ends of both wires at the same time and go around the top of the barrel. And then we're going to split both of those wires on either side of each of these earrings. And then we're going to finish the loop. So we're going to readjust the round nose pliers so we can kind of get around that barrel. And then we're going to pull that tail end tight on the one side, and then we're going to pull it tight on the other side. And there we've created our loop to attach the ear wires to in a little bit here. And now using my index finger, I'm going to bend this wire back around a little bit there. Oh, then I switched over to my middle finger, just whatever finger you have available. And then we're going to bend this down. And then once we get to the spiral, we're going to split those wires apart again. And then pull the tail end so that it comes to the top of those spirals. Or the bottom, whichever way you're looking at it. But it's the top of the spiral if you're having it the right direction. Now getting back on target here, we need to push those wires on the left in a little bit. We want that little oval shape to be a little bit tighter. So that's where we're going to set our bead. So here I'm just going to check to make sure that fits in there nicely, and it does. That's how we want it to fit. So now you can see that I have two mirror images of these. And that's how you want to do your earrings. Now I'm going to cut the tail end of one of these pieces off. So I'm going to leave about 1 centimeter past the spiral, as you can see right there. I'm going to snip off that end. I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and grab the tail end of this wire and make a small little loop, just as we did in the beginning, bringing the tail end of that wire back onto itself as tight as possible. And now we're going to create another little spiral, like so. There we go. And I'm just going to pull that down just a little bit. And I'm going to adjust it. And then I'm going to make this I'll come up a little bit more. I want this spiral to be a little bit higher than my other spiral. So you can see that there's a little bit of adjusting that happens in this process, and that is fine. And here we're going to bend that up just a little bit more until I get it to be just above the other spiral. Here I'm going to tighten up my little spiral. And now I'm going to just push these together to see that I have it about where I want it, which I do. So I'm going to pull that back out. And now I'm going to bend this wire back toward that other loop so that they're almost touching, or that they are touching. And then I'm going to adjust my loop here to make sure that it is directly on top or centered between those two spirals, like so. And now we're going to do the other side, or the other earring. Again, I'm going to cut off, leaving 1 centimeter of length past that spiral. And then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and create a loop at the tail end of this wire, bringing the tail end of that wire back to itself, like so. And now we're going to create a spiral at the end of this wire. It's going to cross back over behind the earring. Like so. And then we're just going to pull that together once we get it where we want it. So here you can see I'm going to grab with my chain nose pliers to kind of help get the last part of this spiral rolled up. And as you can see, again, it does take a little bit of adjustment to try to get that just like you want it to. And there we have our spiral, and I'm just going to match it and make sure that it's approximately the same as the other one. And as you can see, it is. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other side, and I'm going to bend this curve here back into itself. We're going to create that little oval shape, like so. And there you can see I've got two identical pieces, but of course mirrored to each other. So there you can see that. And now we want to just add a little flair to these pieces. So I'm just going to hammer these out a little bit to give them a flat surface for the light to kind of shine off of. So here I'm doing that. Be careful not to hammer where the wires cross over each other, because that could make a weak point where they can bend and break. So there you can see that light reflecting off of that flat surface of those wires. And so here I'm going to do that again a second time. And again, be careful not to hammer over where those wires cross. And there you can see that light just catching on that flat surface. So next we're going to make our ear wires. And I've grabbed my 20 gauge wire cut at 4.3 centimeters each, and grabbing my looping pliers, I'm going to grab the tail ends of these wires and wrap them around that 2mm barrel on the looping pliers until the ends of the wire meets back up with itself. Now, after I finish struggling to get this wire off of my looping pliers, we're going to take the looped end of these wires and place them between the 7 and 9mm barrel, with the loop facing over the top side of the 7mm barrel. We're going to take the tail end of those wires and wrap it around the 9mm barrel until the tail end is about 5mm from the looped end. And there you can see we got both earrings side by side. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grab the tail end of these wires about 2mm in and give it a little bend upward, like so. And there you can see the shape of our ear wires. And now we're going to give these ear wires a bit of a flare and a bit of hardening at the same time. So I'm going to cover about half of these ear wires that goes into the ear. The part that is facing out, I'm going to hammer and give it a little bit of a flare here. And see, you can see a little bit of that flat side where the light catches on it, just gives it a nice little touch. You don't have to do this part. I just like to do that. And then later I'll take a nylon hammer and hammer the rest of those to kind of harden them up. But there you can see the outside edge of these ear wires have a little bit of a flat surface to them. And now with my cut burr, I'm going to place that over the end of my wire, and there you could see that jagged edge of this wire. So I'm going to take this cut burr, place it over the end of the wire, and I'm just going to give it a few twists. You can also use a file to do the same thing. You just have to make sure you get all the way around the edges, and that works just as well. So now, after giving that a nice little deburring, we have a nice, smooth, rounded surface. And now I'm going to do the second ear wire. And I've sped this up a little bit so you don't have to watch me all over again as long. And there we have a completed set of ear wires. And there they are, all polished up and ready for the next part. So now we're going to grab our 24 gauge wire, and we're going to place this into the piece coming up behind the longer side with the spiral on it. And we're going to wrap around 3 times or 4 times until we come back up around the back side of the piece like so. And then we're going to push our wraps together nice and neat and tidy. And then we're going to take our 6mm Labradorite bead and thread that on until it gets into the center of this earring. And then we want to make sure this wire comes over the top of the right side or the shorter side of this earring. And then we're going to wrap around 5 times until we come all the way back around and get it behind the piece, the tail end of the wire behind the piece here in just a minute. So here is my 5th wrap. I'm going to press those wires together. And then I'm going to do one more wrap on this side. I like to wait till the very last to do the last wrap on that beginning side because sometimes it gets pulled or it just messes up a little bit, and I like to do it very last. So I put one more wrap around, press my wraps all together nice and neat and tidy, like so. And then I'm going to cut the tail ends of these wires off over the back side of my piece. So grabbing my flush cutters, I'm going to snip up this wire so that the tail end will lay right in the center of the wire on the back side of the piece. Now with my chain nose pliers, I am going to burnish that wire down onto the back of this piece. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. Again, I'm going to burnish that piece down. And now it's nice and smooth and won't catch on and everything. And look how beautiful that is. So now we're going to do the same thing with the other side or the other earring. So I'm going to grab that 24 gauge piece of wire, thread it through the center of my piece, and then again wrap 4 wraps around the longer side of this earring. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to bring that tail wire back up through the piece and over the top of the shorter end of the earring. And then grabbing my 6mm Labradorite bead, we're going to thread that on to the tail end of that 24 gauge wire. And then we're going to wrap the tail end around the shorter end of the earring 5 times. So there was 2, 3, 4, and grabbing my chain nose pliers, we'll get this 5th one. 5. There we go. And now we're going to wrap one more wrap around the top side of this piece to ensure we get a nice tight wrap for our 5th wrap. And now with my flush cutters, I'm going to nip off the end of this wire so that it will sit directly over the top side or the back side of the wire. We're going to nip off both pieces, and then with the chain nose pliers we're going to burnish that wire down onto the larger gauge wire. Like so. And the last tail end. And there we go, all nice and smooth. Oh, a little bit more. There. Now we've got 2 completed earrings, and we just need to add our ear wires. So grabbing my ear wire and my chain nose pliers, I'm going to bend this loop outward to the side, not pulling it forward. Ensure that your piece is facing forward. You're going to place that onto your ear wire. Then bend that loop back into place. Like so. And look how cute that is. And now we're going to do the same with the other ear wire. Grabbing our chain nose pliers, twisting that loop out to the side. Making sure the front is facing forward, placing it on the loop, and then twisting that loop back into place. Like so. And there we have the completed set. And there you can also see that reflection or refraction I was talking about with the light. You can kind of see that catching the light there. Aren't those gorgeous? I just love Labradorite. If you wanted to make your earrings with different beads, what type would you use? Do you have a favorite stone? If so, let me know in the comments below. Also, I'd love to hear your feedback. What did y'all think of these fun earrings? I hope y'all enjoyed watching this video. If you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. This just lets YouTube know that you like my content, and they'll push these videos out to even more creative people like yourself. If you haven't already and you'd like to see more of my tutorials, then click that subscribe button. It's free and will just let you know when a new tutorial is up for you to view. Thank you guys for your continued support. I sure do appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next Thursday.